I don't remember the first word she spoke to me, but I remember her eyes. The kind of eyes that didn't just look, they held you still. Deep brown, steady, and patient, as if they had already seen too much of the world and weren't easily surprised. She was older than me. Everyone could see that. But I couldn't stop measuring the space between us whenever she walked into a room, the way the air shifted, how conversations bent around her presence. She carried herself with that impossible mix of confidence and weariness, as if she had nothing left to prove and yet still guarded something fragile. That night it was quiet. Just the two of us, the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, and the low light of the lamp between us. I should have said something casual, something safe, but my throat felt tight. She sat across from me, legs crossed, a glass balanced in her hand. Her fingers tapped softly against the rim, each tap a small reminder of her patience thinning. "You're quiet," she said at last, her voice low, carrying a warmth that only made my silence more obvious. I don't know what to say," I admitted. My laugh was short, awkward, too quick. Her lips curved, not into a smile exactly, but into something close. "You don't have to fill the air for me." The way she said it, steady, deliberate, made me think she'd spent years surrounded by people who did just that. Talking too much, trying too hard. I let the silence grow. It wasn't comfortable, not yet, but it wasn't unbearable either. I studied her in the half-light, the faint lines at the corner of her mouth, the way her hair slipped loose from its clip, how her hand stayed resting near mine on the arm of the chair. Close enough that if either of us shifted, our fingers might touch. And when they did, it wasn't planned. Her hand brushed mine, just a fleeting slide of skin. But it was enough. I froze. She didn't. Her eyes caught mine, and she didn't look away. The room shrank down to that single moment, the soft friction of her touch still warming my hand, her gaze steady, unflinching. My chest tightened. I wanted to say something, to ask her what this was, what it meant, but the words dissolved before they could form. She leaned a little closer. Not much. Just enough that her perfume, subtle, not sweet but earthy, like sandalwood and something faintly citrus, reached me. "Don't be afraid of me," she said softly. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even a plea. It was something in between, a reassurance she wasn't sure I would believe. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. "I'm not," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. Her hand stayed near mine, fingers relaxed, but her body leaned back slightly as though pulling the moment back into safety. And still, her eyes stayed locked on me, searching for something I wasn't sure I could give. The silence swelled again, denser now, charged. My heartbeat was too loud in my ears, too fast for the calm she carried so easily. I opened my mouth, finally ready to break, to ask the question that hovered between us. But then, a sharp knock rattled the door. We both turned. Neither of us moved to answer. Her hand slipped from the armrest, brushing mine one last time as she stood. And when she looked back at me before walking to the door, her gaze carried everything we hadn't said yet. The knock at the door faded into memory, but it left behind something heavier than the sound itself, the knowledge that someone, anyone, could have walked in on what almost happened. We never spoke about that night in exact terms. She poured herself another glass, handed me water, and asked how work was going as if nothing had shifted. But it had. I felt it in the way I couldn't meet her eyes for long, and how my hand still remembered the warmth of hers brushing mine. She had been married once. I knew that much. A ring-shaped tan line still faintly marked her finger, though the years had softened it. I didn't know the details, she never offered, and I never asked directly. But sometimes, in her silences I heard them, the echoes of someone who left, or someone she had to let go. I'd never been married, of course. I was too young for that, too uncertain about everything. My history looked small next to hers, a couple of short relationships that dissolved before they ever carried weight. She never asked me about them, but I caught her listening closer than she needed to when I mentioned anyone. It was the gap between us that pressed hardest. Not just the years, though that was part of it. The way I was still figuring myself out while she moved with the certainty of someone who already had. She wasn't old, not at all, but she was established. And I was still learning how to stand still. That was the risk. The thing unspoken. If anyone noticed how I looked at her, too long, too often, they'd wonder what I thought I was doing. They'd wonder what she thought she was doing. She caught me once. My gaze lingering where it shouldn't have, the curve of her neck as she leaned forward, the faint pulse beating there. She turned, and I dropped my eyes too quickly, heat rising to my ears. "You watch people," she said lightly, not accusing, but not innocent either. "I don't mean to," I muttered, fingers tightening around my glass. Her smile was soft, almost apologetic. "I used to watch too. It's not a crime." Her hand rested on my shoulder then, just for a second. Light, casual, but it wasn't casual to me. My skin burned where her fingers had been long after she pulled away. The room seemed too small after that. Too quiet, with only her voice filling the space. She talked about books, about how she'd stopped finishing them halfway through because endings rarely satisfied her anymore. I pretended to listen fully, but my focus was elsewhere, the way her lips shaped each word, the slight breath that escaped between sentences, brushing the air between us. And when she leaned closer, not much, just enough that her sleeve brushed mine, neither of us pulled back. We stayed that way, shoulder to shoulder, in a silence that said more than anything we might have dared to speak. The sound of footsteps in the hallway broke the silence first. Quick, unexpected. My chest tightened. We were still sitting too close, shoulder against shoulder, her sleeve brushing mine. I moved back, almost knocking my glass off the table. She caught it before it tipped, her fingers steady against mine. Then the door opened. A friend of hers, I didn't know him well, leaned in, keys jangling in his hand. His voice was casual, but his eyes flicked between us. "Am I interrupting?" The question landed sharper than it should have. She didn't flinch. "No," she said smoothly, setting my glass down as if her hand hadn't just lingered over mine. "You're fine." I forced a smile, too quick, too obvious. My throat was dry, and I couldn't think of a single word to add. He nodded, stepped back, and closed the door again. His footsteps faded down the hall. We stayed frozen in place for a long moment. My pulse was hammering. She exhaled first, slow, controlled, but her hand trembled slightly when she reached for her drink. "That was close," I muttered before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and warning, but then softened. "Too close," she admitted. The words hung there, heavy, unspoken meaning pressing down on both of us. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I kept them in my lap. But she shifted toward me again, not enough to be obvious, just enough that I felt her warmth return. "You know this can't," she started, then trailed off. I turned, and our faces were suddenly closer than they should have been. Too close to pretend it was nothing. Her breath brushed against my cheek, slow and even, though I could see the pulse quickening at her throat. My heart matched it, beat for beat. I should have pulled away. Instead, I leaned closer. Just slightly, testing the line neither of us had drawn but both of us felt. Her lips parted, not to speak, but not quite ready to close the distance either. The air between us was electric. I could hear my own breathing, sharp, shallow. Her eyes flicked from mine to my mouth, then back again. I wanted to kiss her. God, I wanted to. But something stopped me, not her, not yet, something inside me, the knowledge of what it would mean. The age, the judgment, the questions we couldn't answer. She was the one who broke first. She leaned back, only slightly, but enough to cool the fire that had surged between us. And then, as if to undo the space she'd created, she reached out and laid her hand over mine. Not fleeting this time. Firm. Steady. Her thumb brushed against my knuckles, a small, deliberate gesture. We didn't kiss. We didn't speak. But her hand stayed on mine. And in that quiet, I knew we'd already crossed further than either of us planned out. I thought I could handle it. The silences, the glances, the near touches that left me restless long after leaving her apartment. But sitting across from her again, the distance felt unbearable. She was speaking about something ordinary, a book she'd read years ago, how it reminded her of places she once lived, but I wasn't hearing the words. I was hearing the space between them, the small pauses, the places where she lingered too long on nothing. When she leaned forward to set her glass down, her hair slipped from behind her ear. Before I realized what I was doing, my hand lifted, brushing it back gently. My fingertips grazed her skin. She froze. So did I. I started to pull back, but her hand caught my wrist, not hard, just enough to stop me. For one sharp second, either of us breathed. "You shouldn't do that," she whispered. "Do what?" My voice came out rougher than I meant. "Look at me like that." Her grip loosened, but she didn't let go completely. I couldn't laugh it off. Not this time. "How else am I supposed to look at you?" Her eyes flicked down, then up again, and the question hung there, dangerous. My chest felt too tight, like something inside me had already snapped. "I'm not what you think I am," she said finally, shaking her head slightly. But her body betrayed her words. She leaned closer, not away. "Then tell me what you are." I pressed, my voice low now, right at her ear. I felt the heat of her cheek against mine, the way her breath caught before she answered. "You're too young," she murmured, as if saying it aloud would be enough to end it. But I didn't move. My hand slipped down from her hair, cupping the side of her face, thumb resting just below her jaw. She didn't push me away. Her lips parted a fraction, her eyes darting to mine with something dangerously close to surrender. The room was too quiet, the world outside forgotten. My heart slammed against my ribs, every nerve tuned only to her. "You think I haven't thought about this?" I whispered. Her eyelids fluttered, just once. Her hand still held my wrist, weaker now, as if she wanted to let go but couldn't. "This is wrong," she said, but her voice broke halfway through. "Then stop me." Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. We leaned closer, the distance shrinking, her breath warm against my mouth, my hand trembling against her skin. I was about to close it, that last impossible space, when the sound shattered everything. Her phone buzzed violently on the table, screen lighting the room in harsh white. She turned her head sharply, just enough to break the line between us, but not enough to move away completely. The moment was broken, but the edge of it still burned, leaving us hovering there, one heartbeat away from no return. The buzzing phone lit up again. A name I didn't recognize flashed on the screen. She didn't answer. She didn't even move to silence it, just stared, jaw tight, until the light faded and the hum of the room returned. I opened my mouth, but she spoke first. "It's no one," she said too quickly. The words were meant to end the moment, but they only sharpened it. "No one," I echoed. My voice came out flatter than I intended. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she heard the challenge underneath. She pushed her chair back and stood, pacing toward the window. The lamplight caught the curve of her shoulder, the way her hands pressed into her sides as if holding something in place. Finally she turned. "You should know, he still calls me." The words landed heavy. "Your ex?" She nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Not because he cares. Because he hates letting go. And because he knows I answer sometimes, even when I shouldn't." I felt heat rising in my chest. Not anger exactly, something messier, rawer. So that's who, yes. She cut me off, sharper than I'd ever heard her. Then softer. That's who. Silence stretched between us. My hands curled into fists at my sides. She leaned against the window frame, her face turned away, as if the distance might soften the truth. You don't owe me an explanation, I said, but my throat was tight. Her head tilted, almost a laugh, but not quite. And yet I gave you one. I stepped closer, drawn without meaning to. Each step made the air heavier, until I was close enough to see the faint tremor in her hands where they gripped the edge of the sill. He can call you, I said slowly, carefully, but he doesn't get to have this. My hand hovered near hers, not touching, but close enough that the warmth bridged the gap. Her eyes met mine then, wide, vulnerable, but burning. And what exactly is this? I didn't answer with words. I leaned in, my voice low near her ear, almost shaking. You already know. Her breath itched, her body turning toward mine before she caught herself. She stepped back, quick, as if the movement alone could keep the line intact. But when she brushed past me, the contact was deliberate, her arms sliding against mine, her shoulder grazing my chest. It was enough to undo me. My pulse surged, my skin alive with every place we touched. She stopped at the table, hand braced on the edge, eyes closed for a moment too long. When she looked at me again, her expression had shifted, not guarded, not playful. Determined. You need to decide, she said quietly, firmly. Because once it happens, there's no undoing it. And then she turned, leaving me standing there, every nerve burning, knowing the next choice would change everything. I didn't sleep that night. Her words, once it happens, there's no undoing it, replayed until dawn. The next evening, I found myself at her door again, though I'd promised I wouldn't come unannounced. I almost turned back twice before I knocked. She opened it slowly. No smile. Just a look that cut through me, as if she already knew why I was there. You shouldn't be here, she said. But she didn't close the door. I know. We stood in the doorway, inches apart, either moving. The hall behind me was too bright, too exposed, and when she finally stepped aside to let me in, relief flooded through me like oxygen. Inside, the air was different. Still. Heavy. She crossed her arms, as if trying to build a wall with her own body. You came to decide? She asked, her tone sharp, but I caught the tremor underneath. I nodded, throat dry. I can't stop, don't say it. She cut me off. She turned away, hand braced on the back of the couch. Don't make this harder than it already is. But I couldn't stay silent. You think I don't know what people would say? You think I haven't thought about all of it? The age, the looks, the whispers. Her shoulders stiffened. She didn't turn around. I don't care, I finished. My voice cracked, but I didn't pull it back. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned. Her eyes were shining, though not with tears, with something harder to name. Longing, fear, anger, all twisted together. You'll regret it, she whispered. Then let me, I whispered back. The silence that followed was unbearable. I crossed the room in 2 steps, stopping just in front of her. Our bodies didn't touch, but the heat between us was suffocating. My hand hovered at her side, trembling. She looked at me as if daring me to close the space. And I did. I touched her first, just the curve of her waist, my palm flat against the fabric of her blouse. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Her breath came shallow, uneven. You're shaking, she murmured, her lips inches from mine. So are you. Her laugh was soft, broken. She lifted her hand and pressed it against my chest, feeling the wild pace of my heart. For a second, I thought she'd push me back. Instead, her fingers curled into my shirt, holding me there. It wasn't clean. It wasn't graceful. We leaned into each other like people falling, colliding in a kiss that was too urgent, too desperate to be anything but real. And in that moment, every wall she'd built, every hesitation I carried, all of it shattered. When we finally broke apart, breathless, she kept her forehead against mine. "I told you not to be afraid," she whispered. "I'm not," I said, and for the first time, it was true. We stayed there for a long time, still touching, still catching our breath. The kiss hadn't solved anything, not the questions, not the years between us, not the way the world would see us if we stepped outside together. But it had made one thing undeniable: either of us wanted to step back. Her hand was still fisted in my shirt. Slowly, she loosened her grip, sliding her palm over my chest instead, as if memorizing the feel of me. I caught her hand before she pulled away, threading my fingers through hers. "You don't have to hold me like I'll disappear," she murmured. "Then don't let go," I said. Her laugh was quiet, shaky, but it softened her. She leaned her forehead against mine, eyes closing as if she needed the stillness. I didn't move. I just held her hand tighter. "You know the hardest part?" she asked after a long pause. "What?" "That I let myself want this. Want you." Her thumb brushed my knuckles, slow and deliberate. "And I kept telling myself it was wrong, that you'd wake up one day and regret it. That I'd be nothing more than a mistake you couldn't explain." I shook my head. "I don't care what anyone else thinks. I only care that you don't push me away." Her eyes opened then, sharp but glistening. She studied me for a beat that felt like forever. And finally, she exhaled. "I'm done running from it." Something inside me settled at those words. We didn't kiss again right away. Instead, she leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. My arms slid around her naturally, holding her as though I'd always been meant to. The quiet stretched on, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was warm. Full. Her hair brushed against my jaw, soft and familiar already. I kissed the top of her head without thinking, and she didn't move away. "This is real," I whispered. "Yes," she said, her voice steady now. "It's real." We stayed like that, bodies pressed close, fingers laced, breathing in sync. The world outside could keep its judgments, its rules, its whispers. In here, in that moment, there was only us, two people who had stopped pretending not to want each other. When she finally looked up at me again, her smile was small but certain. "Don't be afraid of what comes next." I kissed her forehead, slow and certain. "Not anymore." And that was how it began, not with certainty, not with perfection, but with the quiet decision to stay close, no matter how complicated the road ahead. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?